Inravio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson, and you're watching 5 on Racing Show. Welcome to another Monday night of race talk. We have some good stuff to talk about, some not so good stuff, but Stafford Motor Speedway this past weekend for the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour event. I was able to partake in that event, although as a crew member with our race team. And we'll talk about that in a little while. And some of the things that went on in the Spring Sizzle, I was kind of surprised that the weather forecast was mostly cloudy, and as soon as I got there Sunday and parked the car, I stepped out of my car, bolt the lightning was coming out of the northwest, and I said, this is not going to be good, and everything was delayed about an hour and a half or so. They were able to show in that it was a passing storm. It wasn't even on the radar in the beginning, but it's typical Stafford Motor Speedway up in Connecticut there. Rain. And if you don't have rain at Stafford, I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll talk about the results there as well. And, it seems like more and more each week when we do our show, we're asking for prayers for somebody, and the recent development is John Andretti, part of the Andretti Racing family. John has colon cancer, stage 4 colon cancer, and he wants everybody to know out there that he's going to fight this battle, but he also said, he waited till he was 54 to get a colonoscopy, and it was a little bit too late. So his message to all of us is don't wait that long. Make sure you get checked out. If this would have been caught sooner, the outcome could have or would have been a lot better for John Andretti. John Andretti is a fighter. He's driven just about everything there is in race cars. Driving in the Indy Series under the Andretti name, and also driving, spent some time with Richard Petty, and has a win with Richard Petty, if I'm not mistaken. So our prayers go out to John Andretti for a good, hopefully heals and things, this stage 4 thing doesn't, give him that checkered flag that sends you up to the racetrack in heaven. It's a tough thing. This cancer stuff is riddling our country, and it seems like all are touched in some way or form by somebody afflicted with cancer. So prayers to John Andretti. Yes. It's funny when we talk about modified race cars and we talk about what made them modifieds. And basically, and I've said this over and over again, you took a car and you modified it. You went to the local scrapyard, the junkyard, you went in your grandmother's garage, and you took a car and you modified it. Well, the Performance Motorsports Network had a little article that caught my interest, and the title of it, "There's Nothing Modified About Modifieds Anymore." And so I thought about that. And those who know me know that I think about what words mean and where they came from. And so I looked it up. I looked up modified in the dictionary, the Webster's New World Dictionary, for that matter. And it says modify. It's a verb from the Latin to limit, to change partially in character, form, blah, 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 blah. That's what we did with these cars years ago. NASCAR's first division, when NASCAR was formed, was the modifieds. They took a car out of the showroom, took it back to their garage, their backyard, their shop, wherever they did their work, and they modified it. They made changes to it to fit their needs and make it a race car. And, again, modifieds, NASCAR's oldest and first division, arguably the most popular race car in the Northeast. Every track in the Northeast seems to have some kind of modified racing. And some of the things that, in reading this article in Performance Motorsport Network, some of the things that they were talking about is the technology of a NASCAR modified has not changed from the earliest days till now. And I was talking to an old-time modified driver, Jerry Cook, a national champion back in the day, and Jerry Cook helped organize the NASCAR Wheeler Modified Tour to make it simpler to keep track of points and have a true modified champion back in 1985. But back in his day, back in the 60s and 70s, they modified these things and made them, they were unique. Back in those days, a car could come out in primer gray. No numbers, no lettering, nothing. Guy goes on a racetrack. That's that guy, that's that guy, that's that guy. Because they all had a distinct look to them. Now, you look at these modifieds today, yeah, they're a little more sleek, a little more aerodynamic. The suspension is almost the same as it was years ago. But when you look at these modifieds of today, you look at them, they're really not any different. Yeah, they're more manufactured now. You go and have a chassis made, whether you go to Troya, whether you go to Chassis Dynamics, whether you go to Spafco, and you have your chassis made. But those specs all come from NASCAR. So when you put them side by side with no tin on them, they pretty much look exactly the same. The tin, how the tin goes on these modifieds, is dictated by NASCAR. So again, they all look the same. The only thing that differentiates some of these cars is some have a B-post with an opera window and some don't. Otherwise, they all look the same still. So what differentiates? Not a thing. And that's what they're saying. The modifieds say they're not modified. You're told that you have to buy this part, you have to get this spec, it has to measure this size and that width and that dimension and this height and this length, and it's a whole different ball game. They all look the same. So yeah, so they're really not modifieds anymore, but yet they're still called modifieds. When you think about the racing on that day, interior-wise, yeah, there's a whole lot of changes going on with the fire extinguisher system that they have, the extinguisher system. You press a button and you fill up with foam and stuff and it stops the fire. They didn't have that years ago. These full containment seats that have you in that seat that you can't move. I can remember sitting in the R&D center, we're talking about the evolution of the seat and where we were going, and there was just a little bit of talk about this containment seat that they were looking to make as part of the rules. And they said that they finally realized that, and for those of us who raced in the 70s and in that era, late 60s, throughout the 70s, the seat used to wrap around your ribs here. So you got in, and it was aluminum, and it kind of stretched, and it contoured to you. I think I just dropped my mic. Oh, I did. That's right, I've done that before. Let's see, let's hook this back up. Sorry about that, folks. You don't even hear what I'm saying. I'm back, I dropped my mic back. And sorry about that. So anyway, it conformed to you. And we're sitting in the R&D center and they say, when you're gonna run through a door, a wooden door, do you lift your arms over your head and hit it with your ribs? No, you hit it with your shoulders. So what did they do? They made the shoulder piece. That was like a phase to the containment seat that comes out. The shifter boots, the way the seats are installed, where the pedals are, the way they're laid out, the footboard itself, for all of that stuff that goes on inside the cockpit of a race car. All different. Back in the day, you had that old-fashioned fire extinguisher, and you had this thing where you just reached, it was a quick release, and you sprayed the fire yourself. Now you just press a button. Press a button. The interrupt switch. You're about to crash into the wall, and you don't want them, you're stuck throttle. You hit this switch. It used to be called the kill switch, but you can't say that. You can't say that. You can't call it a kill switch. You have to call it an interrupt switch. It interrupts the electric going to the ignition and shuts the motor off. And what that does, if the throttle's sticking and it's screaming at 10,000 RPMs, you hit that button, the motor shuts down, and the hit's not any less, from my experience, but it's still a little bit different than they had in the old days. But modifieds. There's nothing modified about a modified anymore. It's just not. And I grew up in an era where the modifieds that were racing were the old coupes and the coaches of the 30s and the 40s. And then the Pinto revolution, Pinto Vega, Gremlin revolution came on board, and the cars started to change. And then the Troya cars, they were a little bit more sleeker than all of the other cars that were being built. And before you know it, you have the cookie cutter cars of today. And I got to agree with this article. There's nothing modified about a modified anymore. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Dale Earnhardt Jr. and the real reason for his early retirement when we come back.
Village Music Shop of Mastic, 1-800-HEY-DUDE, your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
Welcome back, everybody. I always have fun in the breaks. Before we talk about Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s early retirement, all the racetracks across the Northeast are starting to open up. It's a little chilly. Sometimes they're fighting rain. And I had the opportunity to go out to my local racetrack on a practice day. And I'll tell you what, I was impressed. I was pleasantly surprised at the number of race cars that were at my local racetrack on practice day. And you know, it's looking at it, I was like, wow, this is good. And then, you know, and for those who don't know and don't read my page and stuff, you know, we kind of hooked up here with Vinny Delaney, the defending INEX champion here on Long Island. And they had a race Sunday. It was a non-points race for the track, but it paid the INEX points. So a lot of the legend guys were there for this event. And, you know, you would think the way I don't want to say the tempers flared, but the way people were going about it, it was like the last race of the season and 20 guys had a shot at the title. And it was a kind of rough race, and, you know, some equipment got torn up. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, the tempers go crazy, and people see and hear what they want to see and hear, and before you know it, you know, you get a bad taste. And I'm not saying that's the situation that I'm talking about, but I want to say something. I don't normally give credit to people, and I'll tell you what, when Eddie and Connie Partridge took over Riverhead Raceway, you know, not that I was a doubter, but I was happy. Here's a racer buying a racetrack, and that was a good thing. A lot of changes were made, and I had the opportunity to get a guided tour of those changes, and had the opportunity to sit with Eddie and talk about the changes before their first season. And what they're doing, I had an opportunity to talk to John Elwood, who's the general manager of Riverhead Raceway, yesterday at Stafford. And he's trying to do what he's trying to do, and whether you agree with him or not, he's trying to make it a family place again. He's trying to make it so that, you know, the casual fan doesn't have to worry about bringing their wife and children or husband and children to the racetrack to enjoy a night of good racing. And him and I had a nice chat, and I had a couple of nice chats with Tom Gatz over the last couple of weeks. And I'm not going to get into the reasons as why we had these discussions, but I believe they understand where I'm coming from, and I understand where they're coming from. And hopefully we could put that together and come to a positive solution that will make everybody happy in the end. So with that being said, for those of you who aren't here on Long Island, whether you're in Connecticut, Jersey, anywhere in the country, I'm going to say support your local racetrack, because if you don't be the guy that's sitting there, oh man, I remember when, Islip Speedway was running. Don't be the guy that says, remember when. Be the guy that says, I can't wait till next year. Nothing's perfect. Not even in our own little households. Nothing is perfect. And, yeah, we're going to disagree. Look, I love I have 2 brothers and a sister, and I love them all equally. And I have one brother. We don't really speak anymore. That doesn't mean I don't love him any less, but it means we have a disagreement. And we'll come to a conclusion on that. Just like when you have a disagreement with an official or a track operator at your local racetrack. Eventually you're going to come to an agreement and an understanding. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But anyway, Dale Earnhardt Jr., his retirement. A lot of people were shocked about that. A lot of people say, whoa, after what he went through to get back in a race car, the rehab, the doctors, the tests, more rehab, more doctors, more tests. And just when he thought he was in, another doctor he had to go see. And then he had to go do all that testing at Charlotte. Hours and hours, lap after lap, trying to make a mess up, because head trauma is a serious thing. And when he finally got the approval. So when he announced, a couple of months into the season, I'm going to retire at the end of this year, I knew there was more to it. And I kind of kept that thought to myself until I could figure out what it is. And I found a published report written by one of ESPN's staff writers, Ryan Hasman. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase what he said. And basically is NASCAR has enforced new changes to the substance abuse policy, which was put in force last month, these changes. And these changes were for HGH and PE. And for those who don't know, they're performing enhancing drugs, and how they test for those things. Offenders now will be fined $25,000 and could face up to 1 year of suspension, which is, you lose a season. That's not good for your sponsor and your fans. Now, for Dale Jr., the changes, I should say, have forced him into early retirement. Why is that? Well, Jr. was one of the many drivers that tested positive for the performance-enhancing substance anabolics. Jr. was fined in the past $25,000 for the violation. NASCAR says right now the violation will almost certainly result in 1 year suspension if Jr. does not retire. If he walks away quiet, it's all done. Now, Fox News confirmed this when they interviewed Jr., and Jr. said his use of anabolics was something that everybody did. Now, if you look at pictures, and I wish I would have had them, if you looked at pictures of Dale before he went on the PEDs, he just looked like a regular guy, and it's all good, not bad shape, no rolls hanging over him. He wasn't a muffin top type of guy, and he didn't have a pot belly. He was okay for a guy who's 42 years old. I wish I looked that good when I was 42 years old. Now you look at him now, and he's got six-pack abs, and he's got a V shape that comes down like a V. His shoulders and arms are very pronounced, because PEDs not only enhance your performance, but it's a steroid, and a steroid builds muscle. And he was definitely one of the guys. It wasn't on the banned list at the time. Now it is. He tested positive. He got nailed. Now, when he was having this interview with Fox, Fox confirmed that he was taking it. He admitted it. And he said, and I quote, "I'm not the only one using this supplement. The whole league has been using this kind of pill for years." And then Junior went on to say, Brian France, is trying to make an example out of me because he's jealous, and I quote, because he got caught in 2003 and I didn't. And I was like, what happened in 2003 that Brian got caught and Junior didn't? And if you go back and look back, and that's talking 14 years ago, Brian France wasn't actually a model citizen. Brian France was doing some stuff and he got caught. Yeah, he's cleaned his act up supposedly, and he's a CEO and president of NASCAR, and he's CEO of NASCAR and president of International Speedway Club along with his sister Lisa France Kennedy. And Brian France nobody heard of Brian France until one day there he was, running NASCAR, changing the business that his grandfather set up, that his father continued to run the way his father wanted it to be run. Brian came in. Corporate America today is not the same as it was in 1948, 1958, or 1968. Corporate America is different. Corporate America is all about keeping your shareholders happy, making money for your shareholders. And a lot of people, competitors and fans alike, don't understand that. Does Brian France in the past, did he do some stuff that he's not too proud of? Yeah. And I'm thinking most everybody out there, me included, have done things in our past that we're not too proud of either. But we did it. We did it. We paid our price. We paid our dues. We learned from whatever the case may be. Junior's statement like that to Fox News, that's not something that should have been said. And I'm going to say his retirement is this year. He's going to be done. Let me tell you, I'm thinking that his car is going to be in post-race tech every week. And I'm thinking he's going to be missing practice sessions because he's going to be, off by a 32nd of an inch or a 16th of an inch, or the laser's going to say something's off, because that's what they do. And I know that for a fact because I was on that side of the fence. And that's one of the reasons I don't do that anymore, because I can't be that way. I can't officiate based on, I like that guy, I don't like that guy. I can't do that. It's hard to do, because if you treat everybody the same, whether you like them or you don't like them, as an official, whether you're a soccer official, baseball official, girls softball official, NASCAR official, whatever it is, when you officiate, if you stick to the rules and you're consistent, nobody could ever say nothing to you about that. Nobody could say, wow, he's not being fair. And I had a driver come up to me after I had left the small confounds of my bull ring here on Long Island and went tour racing. And one driver came up to me and we were talking, after the races, we're all hanging out, having an adult beverage. And he says to me, he goes, because I didn't always agree with you when you made a call. And I was kind of hard on people, and looking back, and maybe I should have been a little softer, but I wasn't. He says, when I look back on you, he goes, and you did something on the racetrack, you know what the penalty was going to be. You knew if you did this, you're going to go in the back of the pack. You knew if you did this, you're going to be parked on the infield for 2 laps and lose the laps. Or you knew you were going to be told to just put it on the trailer. In some cases, you knew that when that race was over, he goes, you were going to come and say, you need to leave. He goes, but not only did you do it to me, but you did it to a defending champion, you did it to a rookie, you did it to a former national champion. It didn't matter. And I said to him, I said, you know why I did that? And first of all, you have to kind of show your authority, especially from the beginning. You can't be wishy-washy. But the late, great Walt Edsel, who I stepped in for and subsequently took over the position, Walt Edsel says to me, they could be your friends in the pit area. You could go have a beer and a hot dog with them. You could have them over your house for barbecue. You can go to their house for a barbecue party. But once they cross the line onto the racetrack and they're on the track, lined up to go racing, they're all just a number. And that took me a long time to understand. And especially the part where Walter said, whatever happens at the racetrack, you leave it at the racetrack. And this is Walt Edsel. And that took me even longer to learn. And once you learn those things, it's a whole different story. It's a whole different story. But, I can remember working tech, and a crew chief gave a series director a hard time, and we were told to get the fine-tooth comb out of that guy. And if you didn't find something, look again. That's not the way to officiate in my book. It never was and it never will be. And I didn't like that. And that's why I do this now. I could talk about it. Anyway, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Spring Sizzler that was held this past weekend at the Stafford Motor Speedway up in Connecticut when we come back.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there. And we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Hey, this is Chris Less Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Village Music Shop of Master. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop. 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi, my name is Aaron from Real Big Fish.
And I'm Ed from Real Big Fish.
And you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Yes, the touring series, the K&N Pro Series West, which has been off since March 25th. The next event will be May 13th at the Spokane County Raceway out in Washington State, there in the Northwest. And the K&N Pro Series East was also off, and their next event is this weekend at the South Boston Speedway in Virginia. The NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour was at Stafford Springs, Connecticut, at Stafford Motor Speedway for Stafford's, I believe, the 44th annual Spring Sizzler. And Ryan Preece took down a win there, followed by Doug Colby, who had the pole. Chase Dowling was third. Eric Goodale fourth. Ted Christopher was fifth. Roman Pennick was sixth. Craig Lutz was seventh. Ronnie Silk eighth. Justin Bonsignor ninth. And Long Island's Dave Sapienza rounded out the top 10. And I'll tell you what, Ryan Preece driving the Eddie and Connie Partridge's own number 6. That was Ryan's first Whelen Modified Tour victory since August of 2015, which was at Bristol. And I'll tell you what, it's watching this race from pit road, where I was on pit road with the Wade Cole race team, as carrying the JTL stickers on his car, another team that we sponsor to a degree. Wade puts 2 cars out on that racetrack every week, the 38 and the 33, and there's a third one sitting in the shop waiting for a driver. Now, here's a guy who finishes these races normally in one piece, old-time racer, open truck, no fanciness about him, a plain fire suit, and goes out there and just goes and racing. And started 24th, finished 17th, a couple of laps down, and he got out of the car like a little kid got off a roller coaster. He goes, the car's good. The car's good. I had a good time today. And I watched the guy at the end who finished in the top 5, who got out of his car and he was angry. He was angry. He didn't have fun that day. He didn't win. He didn't win. And it's all about expectation and disappointment. If you know you're going to go in and, like with myself, when I was driving a race car, I wouldn't even call it racing. When I was driving a race car, I just wanted to go and do laps. And to me, if I drove it off the racetrack, man, that was good. If I drove it off the racetrack and maybe had to fix a creased fender or quarter panel, that was awesome. Because I didn't want to go back to the shop or the garage and spend night after night fixing stuff that I really didn't know how to fix, or getting phone calls from a guy I wrecked who's going to wreck me next week. So I'm like, well, why fix it? He's going to wreck me next week to pay me back. You know, it stopped being fun. But I have fun with Wade and his crew and his gang. They're just old school people, and they know what they're doing. But Ryan Preece, he wins the event. They give him the checker flag. He throws in gear, and he's going to do his burnouts. And all of a sudden, you hear something pop, and the back end of the car is planted on the ground. When I asked one of the crew members, they said the drive shaft broke, but the drive shaft would have just went down. The whole back end wouldn't have came. So I'm thinking it was more than that. I'm thinking a lot of the rear end suspension stuff collapsed and broke, and there were no donuts. You had to be towed to victory lane. And and Ryan Preece, he had the opportunity to do some Xfinity racing last year, and could he get some rides in the Xfinity? Absolutely. But I'm thinking a lot of his rides would be start and park things. And Ryan Preece is not a start and park guy. Ryan Preece is a racer. He's a winner. And one of my drivers said to me once, he goes, Joe, once you got the taste of wins, you don't just want to drive around. You don't want to finish fifth. You don't want to, finish in the middle of the pack. You want to be battling for the win, at least know you have a shot at the win. And I'll say this, not being a race car driver that ever won a race, I don't know that feeling. To me, I didn't hit Bill Batch, and I drove it off the track. It was a good day. It was so good. I didn't have somebody in my window as I was being towed off the racetrack. That was a good day if that didn't happen. I remember there was one season I was towed off the racetrack every single week. And people was like, why do you keep doing this? I said, because I'm having fun. And I was having fun. But, when I look at a guy like Wade Cole get out of the car with a big smile and it's all good and the car's, there's not a mark on it, I'm like, wow, man, he's having fun. And that's why I enjoy working with that team and helping them out in the way that I can, through my other business. And even like Sunday when I was at Riverhead Raceway for the Legend Race and walking around the pit area, and there were a couple of Legend cars that were up at Bethel last year that carried the Inravio.com sticker, and they still had it. I was like, this is great. And one of the guys was telling me, he goes, yeah, when I repainted my car, I didn't know if I can get another sticker. So he goes, I marked it out with the blue trim tape and put paper around it so it wouldn't be ruined. I was like, dude, I'll get you another one. I have to go through that. But to walk around and see that guy was still carrying our sticker on his car, that made me feel good. And I point out, hey, look, there's our sticker, And like, oh yeah, it's good. But that's what it's all about. It's those little things that put a smile on your face when you go to the racetrack. Those are the little things, and now that I'm not competing, and every once in a while I want, wow, I want to do this again. Did I make some phone calls, and I'll call, somebody, what do you got? What do you got laying around? And then they tell me, and then we talk about a price, and all of a sudden I'm like, nah, that's a little bit too much, that it could all be wiped out in a second. And then I'm still not sure if I'm going to get a fair shake, so it's just easy to just do my thing from where I do it, whether I do it here on Mondays or I help people out on the side, or we, buy a can of fuel or a barrel of fuel for somebody so they can go racing. And that's, to me, I'm having fun with that. And like, one of my drivers that, came to me, he was all upset over some incident that happened. And he goes, that's it, I'm not coming back, I'm done. And then he messaged me during the week and says, I can't do that. I got sponsors that I'm obligated to, and you're one of them. And I says, let me tell you something. You do what you feel you have to do. You go race somewhere else, go race somewhere else. But, in your situation, I don't think you want to do that. I think you want to stay where you're going. And it's funny, in your old age, you talk a little different and you think a little different. Because if I had a nickel every time I said I wasn't coming back to my local racetrack, I'd be rich, because I wouldn't have all that money spent on racing. I'd have all those nickels that I said every week sometimes. That's it, I'm not coming back. And as a racer, we've all said that out of frustration. We've all said it. And I'm sure there were days that the late Charlie Jazambek out of his car, I'm not coming back to this place. And he was the first one online the next time they raced there. They all do it. They all do it, all of us do it. And it's just one of those things that we out of frustration sometimes, think about this. Think about, and I don't mop floors, whatever, but I'm going to use this analogy. Think about, you just mopped your kitchen floor, or you just swept your garage out, or you cleaned off the patio. And next thing you know, somebody goes walking through your kitchen with muddy shoes and it's all messed up, or you just waxed the floor and the wax is ruined, or you just painted your garage floor with the gray paint and those speckles, and somebody went walking through that and it's ruined. Think about how upset you're gonna be at that time. Well, you worked on your race car 5 nights a week. You went to your local parts guy 3 of those 5 nights and spent your entire paycheck, because you gotta go racing Saturday, and you're hoping that you just maybe qualify and get a good finish and get some of that money back. It's the same feeling, it's the same frustration. You know, and when once you let it settle and, you know, you cooler heads prevail, boom, you're good. Everything's good. Maybe. Maybe. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We come back, we'll talk about what went on in Richmond with the Xfinity Series and the Monster Energy Series at the Cup when we come back.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Rich Willie. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, you're punching the. But if you have this bracelet from Inravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Anyway, the Camping World Truck Series was off this past weekend. The next event will be at the Kansas Speedway in Kansas, and on May 12th. So they have a wacky schedule. I've said that before. However, there is some Camping World Truck Series news. Travis Pastrana will return to the NASCAR for the Camping World Truck Series race at Las Vegas. His first race since 2014. Pastrana will drive for Nice Motorsports at the September event at Vegas. He will test starting tomorrow at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, as it's been a couple of years since he's been in the car. Pastrana was a champion motocross, supercross competitor in the early 2000s. And in 2013, Pastrana drove for Rouse Fenway Racing in what is now known as the Xfinity Series, driving car number 60. All right, the Xfinity race at Richmond, won by Kyle Larson. Justin Allgaier was second. Daniel Hemrick from the pole was third. Austin Dillon was fourth. Ryan Blaney was fifth. Darrell Wallace Jr., another sixth place finish with Darrell Wallace. Elliott Sadler, seventh. Michael Annett, eighth. Casey Mears was ninth, and Spencer Gallagher rounding out the top 10. In the Cup Series at Richmond, Joey Logano was the winner there, followed by Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin third, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was fourth, Kevin Harvick fifth, Jamie McMurray was sixth, Ryan Newman seventh, Kurt Busch eighth, Eric Almirola ninth, and Martin Truex Jr. was 10th. Matt Kenseth started on the pole, finished 23rd. Richmond, the modifieds used to go there. Nice place. Tough, but it always put on a good show there. The Cup Series this weekend put on a good show there. In fact, Sunday's race was everything a fan would want in a race. Side-by-side racing, and some of the drivers in the top 10 in points were battling and jockeying for a win during the final laps. According to the Richmond Times, the only thing missing from this event was a crowd. 10 years ago, this same event had a sold-out crowd, standing room only, of 112,029 people. Although NASCAR doesn't announce attendance or shares attendance figures that are at the tracks, now this racetrack with the reduced seating only seats 60,000, and that was only half full. 30,000 people estimated watched this event live. Many other top series tracks are also facing the same issues. And for the first time in 2 decades, NASCAR did not have a full field with only 38 cars showing up for this event. 38 cars. Now, with Richmond's proximity to the airports, for lodging all around the facility, close to the downtown, a lot to do, a lot of hotels, a lot of restaurants, this can't be understood. Yeah, when you go to a Talladega or a Bristol or a Kansas where they're in the middle of nowhere, Homestead, all right, it's tough to get there, it's tough to get out, and your hours from a hotel, you know, you have to bring everything you want to bring. You got to feel you're cool. Yeah, you can understand some of the downslide in attendance. But here, Richmond, that place was an overflow race year after year. And some people were saying because it was really hot, they didn't want to go, it was too hot. Now Richmond officials, you know, track operators are saying, maybe we should move this back to the nighttime. Be more exciting, more people would go. You know, I don't know. But you got to ask yourself why. Why is stuff like this happening? Why is attendance down in the top series? A lot of people say the cost to go, the cost of hotels, the cost of tickets. I don't know if that's it. I think part of the problem is there's too much racing on TV, and I'm saying that. There's too much racing on TV. Think about the 60s. You know, most of us were around in the 60s. I think there's some people probably watching the show that probably weren't born yet. But think about racing that went on in the 60s, even the 70s. Where did you watch your races? Wide World of Sports on ABC TV. Saturday afternoons at 4:30. It was on from 4:30 to 6. These races are 4 or 5 hours, but they pre-recorded it weeks ago, months ago, and you saw the beginning, you saw some side-by-side, some passing, all the wrecks, you know, not just the spins, all just the wrecks. You saw some of the pit stops, and you saw the end. So they were always in between the races. They had alpine ski jumping, they had downhill ski, they had bobsleds in you know, Siberia, they had Acapulco cliff diving. So in that hour and a half, that 90 minutes, which probably 8 minutes of it was commercial, so really 82 minutes of a 4.5 hour race. But we were glued to our TVs, you know, eating our popcorn, drinking our soda and beer, whatever, watching these events on TV, couldn't wait. Get the TV guide would come out, you know, whatever, and you'd look and say, well, oh, just showing a race, I got to plan my day around it. And then in '79, CBS first flagged the flag coverage of the Daytona 500, you know, the big fight in the infield that TV thought, that's not going to be good. And all of a sudden it made people watch. Who's going to fight next week? Not that fighting's good, you know, but I'm just saying. When you think about that, when you think about what's different for the fan today as it was years ago, is they could sit home and watch it TV. They don't need to spend thousands of dollars to go to a race anymore. They can watch it on TV. And if they have a smart TV, they could even log into their favorite driver and listen. And they can pick what view, what angle, and what part of the racetrack they want to watch. TV is destroying racing. It's making it so that it's easier to watch it at home. Why go? There were racetracks that I went to religiously every year. Daytona, Martinsville, Bristol, New Hampshire. Religiously, I went. Pocono. And you know what? Sometimes I sit back and say, wait, now, I'll pick a Daytona. You know, it's a week. It's actually, it's more than a week of racing because the shootout is the Saturday, then there's qualifying for the pole, then there's all these practice days, and then there's the duels, 150s on Thursday, you got the trucks on Friday, the Xfinity on Saturday, the Cup on Sunday, and my ticket package was about $1,400. I'm down there for 10 days. I was lucky to have family there that I stayed with. I didn't have lodging. You know, you still had to eat, but you have to eat if you're home too. So I really can't count the eat, but I had to get there, you know, either drive the 18 hours that it took, and gas and tolls, or flow. Took my kids, and you know that was an expensive thing. And then you know you're at the racetrack, so you have to have stuff, and you know that was a $3,000 weekend just to go to the races. Because my package was you had to buy 3. You had to get 3 events. One had to be the Cup. So you could go to anything you want. You can go to the duels, the trucks, the Xfinity, the Cup, the shootout, whatever you want. You pick them. And, you know, and I was like, wow. And then I'd get home from the event because then we'd spend the second week over in Orlando visiting some mouse and his friends. And I'd get home and there was the ticket bill for next year. So they sat on my, you know, $1,500 for 50 weeks. And I was just one of the couple of 100,000. You know, and my Bristol ticket, same thing. The hotels shoot up the prices, the restaurants, you know, shoot up their prices. You know, and I finally stopped going to that one. Martinsville is still reasonable. Thank you, Clay Campbell. New Hampshire, still reasonable. Although the hotels are a little wacky, that's not Bruton Smith's fault, Bob Bear's fault either when he had it. That's the hotels, you know, they get greedy. But I really think that TV is making it so people aren't going. You know, you can watch it in these 75-inch screens, full surround sound, where you hear the car starting in that speaker, and then as they go by on the screen, or that speaker. Man, you close your eyes, you swear you were there. All you got to do is, you know, maybe open up a can of Camp 2 and burn some rubber on your barbecue, and you really think you're there because you got the smell of the fuel and the smell of the rubber. But that's what's happened is TV has destroyed it. And they're not even looking at the local race or the touring series. You're hard-pressed to get a touring race, whether it's the K&N Pro Series or the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour. With NASCAR Euro or Connecticut or Canadian Tire Series, it's hard to see one of those races on TV. And if it is, it's like I said, that race happened weeks ago, and it's so chopped up. It's like the old wide world of sports days. But you know, you go to social media and they, hey, the modified race is on, you know, channel such and such at 1:30 in the morning. And, you know, we all set our alarms and, you know, turn it on. You know, we're shot when we go to work. Why couldn't that be in prime time? Why can't these car auctions be at 2 o'clock in the morning? Because none of us, I know I'm not paying $150,000 for a 1956 Ford Crown Victoria. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. So why would I even be interested in that? Yeah, I'd like to see what the cars go for, some of the muscle cars in the day. But for like 5 hours, I don't need to see that for 5 hours. I'd rather watch a race. And I don't mind even watching a race that I was at and it's on again. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, man, wow, that guy wrecked that guy, you know. And again, that's all on angles. But when you think about that stuff, when you think about what's going on TV with racing, I mean, do we really need 3 hours of practice 2 days in a row to watch cars practicing? I don't think so. Tell me if you agree with that or not. How many of us sit there, we get our bag of chips, our beer, our pretzels, and our soda, whatever, we sit back in our recline and put our feet up, and watch practice for 3 hours. I don't know anybody that does. I don't. And yeah, going live, and I'll tell you what, and I tell this to people, you go to a race live, because you think of Bristol, it's 5 hours long, or Martinsville, and you're sitting there, watching on your TV, and you're dozing, and you're falling asleep, and your wife's kicking you, yo, wake up, I'm awake, or all of a sudden, you hear like a Lifetime movie come on, and you go, I'm watching a race, and in the meantime, you were sleeping for an hour. You don't do that live. When you're live, you pick what you want to watch. You put on your scanner who you want to listen to. You watch them on pit road, and you have little pools with everybody in your area. Who's got this, who's got that, and all this, and people are passing around stuff, and it's all good. There's nothing like going to a race live. But TV's ruining that. TV's ruining that. It's taking that away. And when I look at the people, and it's funny. And I always say, when I see like an old couple like in their 80s and they're still walking around the garage area, checking out the cars, they'll shuffle them, and one has that little cart that when you get tired, you can still sit on. And I look at it, I says, I hope I don't turn into that person. I love going to the races live, I really do. But you don't see a lot of young people. And when you do see them at the races, they're like this with their phones like this. And all of a sudden, everybody stands up and they look. And they're on their phones. They're not watching the races. They're not watching the races like we did when we were younger. And I'll tell you what I'll never forget, and this will be in my head until I die. Sitting in the turn 4 bleachers with my grandfather watching the races. And I can remember, we watched the figure eights and we watched whatever else they had there. And then the modifieds would come out. My grandfather hit him on the shoulder. Hey, these are the money cars. And I was like, whoa. And I can remember the announcer, Sonny Granger, where they have 25 cars lined up on the grid to start the race. And he would say, you're looking at $250,000 worth of equipment. This is like 1970 on that racetrack. Because the modified won for about $10,000 back then. And as a kid, you're 12 years old, $250,000, whoa. Where did they get this money from? Now the motors alone are $40,000. You can throw everything else, you're looking at $70,000. So when you have, 24 cars on the racetrack, you're talking about $2.5 million. It's a big difference. But I'll never forget the feeling of sitting with my grandfather watching the races and sitting there saying, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to try this. I want to carry that checker flag at the end and everybody's cheering or booing me. I want to be that guy. And when I got the opportunity to be that guy, I realized there's more to driving a racer than just banging through the gears, going down the straightaway, turning left, and in figure 8 cases to turn right, then turn left. It's different. You don't see those young kids anymore, at least I don't. Maybe I'm not cognizant to it, but the young kids are missing. And a lot of the racetracks that I've been at in the last couple of years, especially some of these dirt tracks, they cater to the young kid. They have a little park area for them to play in, and they have little raffles for them, and they give them stuff. And you got to do things to get them back. And so they bother mommy and daddy or grandma and grandpa. Hey, come on, I want to go to the races again. And I'll tell you what, there's worse things you could be doing. Worse things you could be doing than going to a racetrack. And I can remember, my parents, my dad and mom, they hated racing. They hated it. It was a waste of time, waste of money, waste of energy, a waste of your brain. And they really didn't like it. My grandfather went. He didn't care if it was 25 degrees. If there was a race, he went. And he didn't care if it was 105 degrees or 100% humid, he went. And I can remember the arguments he used to have with my parents about taking me to the racetrack. And those memories stick in your head. And my parents, especially my dad, he wasn't a sports guy. He didn't understand like that bond, that loyalty of, I'm doing so. It was better than hanging out at 7-Eleven. Not that he let me do that either, but it was fun. And I think TV's ruined a lot of the racing, and I think it's been too much, corporate America is involved now. You don't see, Joe's Garage on these cars anymore. And I think kind of Richard Petty kind of ruined that when he brought STP in. But whatever, it is what it is. And hopefully it can only get better. But I think we got to start to wrap up here. So I want to thank everybody again for listening in. And again, a big thank you to all those who watched the 2 anniversary shows, the live studio audience, and a big thank you to Jimmy Rennick of Metropolitan Recycling for stepping up and sponsoring those 2 shows on such short notice. And we had a good time, and we had a good time, especially anytime you get Jimmy Rennick here and John Visconti in the same room, let alone on the same studio, you're gonna laugh, and it's all good. So anyway, again, thank everybody for helping us celebrate 300 shows. Thanks for watching it live. Thanks for watching it during the week if you couldn't get to it that Monday night. And I know 22 Figure 8 with his crazy working hours, I'm sure he logged in and checked it out. So I want to thank you guys and everybody that's in on the chat room tonight. Thank you. And wherever your endeavors will bring you this weekend, please be safe. Please be careful. Somebody you love, give them a hug. God bless you all. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.